So Mark Rogers then joins me now. Mark, the charge, at least from organizations such as Action Society, is that you, among others, as the DNA Oversight Board, are letting down victims of violence, particularly violence directed at women, in that you're not playing your part, with the result that we sit with the backlog that is being alleged by Action Society. To that charge, how do you plead?
Yes, good afternoon, Thulasizwe, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think perhaps before we get into that, I think it's important for the viewers out there to understand who the DNA Board is, or the National Forensic Oversight and Ethics Board, and the mandate of the board. The DNA Board is established in terms of the Criminal Law Forensic Procedures Amendment Act of 2013, Section 15V of the Act. But Section 15Z specifically sets out the statutory obligations of the board. And in particular, it says that the board has to monitor the implementation of the chapter. And then also specifically, it says that the board has to make proposals to the Minister of Police in terms of any improvements to the overall operations and the functioning of the National Forensic DNA Database. And then also, importantly, in terms of any ethical, legal, or social implications around how DNA is collected, stored, and managed and administered by the Forensic Science Laboratory. But then, importantly, it also has to provide oversight. And I think this is the important word that we need to focus on here. And if we look at it in context with the current situation that we're faced with and the challenges around the backlog, the DNA Board, as an oversight body, has no enforceable mandate in terms of dictating, so to speak, to the forensic science laboratories or SAPs in a broader sense, how to conduct its operations. Rather, what the board has to do is to provide that oversight and to identify where there are red flags, early warning systems, to look at how those issues can be rectified. There was a statement that was made on your show on the 6th of August that said that the board, and this board in particular, was specifically put in place to rectify this problem. That is incorrect. If we go back and we look at the trends and when this problem began to emerge, this issue around the backlog began to emerge around about 2018, and this was during the term of the previous board. And the previous board had already then began engaging with SAPS management, as well as the minister at the time, to begin to agitate for the kind of change that was needed. So effectively, the current board has taken over the mantle, so to speak, in trying to address these challenges. So
accepting what you just said about your statutory role and what your mandate is in terms of the statute that you mentioned, there's a part that I particularly like. You talk about the issue of oversight and insist that you have no enforceable powers to dictate to the forensic services, etc., on how to do their jobs. Within that oversight work that you do then, you're saying that your job partly entails pointing out where there are red flags and early warnings. Give me your sense then and your reading of the situation. Does it tally with the reading of people such as Action Society, for example, that we're looking at a backlog of some 300,000 cases in as far as the backlog is concerned, and that it has increased some 44% since May last year?
So the figure of 300,000 that was given is incorrect. The figure that was ring-fenced, and we have to understand that at some point, in order to manage and contain the figures, because obviously on a daily basis, weekly basis, new cases continue to come in, and we need to be able to separate those and to make sure that incoming cases don't become part of the backlog. So on the 11th of May, when the minister made the call that urgent intervention needs to be put in place to manage down the backlog, there was a ring-fenced figure of 210,864 that was identified as the total backlog figure. As we stand as of the 19th of August, the backlog now sits at 166,327. So effectively 44,537 cases have been concluded. And that excludes essentially new entries that have come in from the 1st of April until the 19th of August this year.
You would agree that in a country such as ours, with the situation of violence against women, the rapes that happen on a daily basis, while you point out that from about 200,000 last year to about 166,000 this year, this is still a figure that's quite high, is it not?
No, indeed. And I should point out that the board has itself been unequivocal in its stance and its position that this is a situation that cannot continue, because these figures represent victims of crime, victims that are being denied justice, and in most cases these are victims of gender-based violence. So it is an unsustainable situation, but it is for that reason that the board has been working closely with both SAPS as well as public-private partners, to look at both short, medium, and long-term solutions, to look at how we can bring normality to the situation, but not only that, to make sure that we put in place long-term solutions to ensure that SAPS can once again become the world-leading forensic science laboratory and institution that it once was.
All right, Mark Rogers, we have to leave it there. Thank you for talking to us and also reaching out for your right of reply. It's an important conversation, and I do hope that you will continue to avail yourselves from time to time, because that's part of a critical cog in this machine of justice, certainly for victims of violence and especially women who are victimized on a daily basis. That is Mark Rogers there. He's from the DNA Oversight Board, responding to some of the contentions made about 2.5 weeks ago. He says the backlog in as far as DNA processing as of the 19th of August stands at about 166,000 samples that need to be processed.